法がないでしょ。まあ、たまには遊びに来てくれてもとは思うけど。
Sorry, Mirai, but you gotta save that stuff for the movie crossovers. Even though you barely appeared in this one and Liko didn't even talk, but that's beside the point. We opened this sequel series with, appropriately enough, a very brief recap of the prequel. And you can really tell this is old footage from the distinct shift in art style that we'll get in just a second. Regardless, it was short, and for any newcomers, it probably wasn't quite enough to explain, considering that Kota didn't appear in them, and she will play a big part in this first episode. But whatever, y'all could just marathon that stuff on Crunchyroll, which for some reason doesn't have this show on it as of the time of this writing. Yeah, there's probably like some sort of licensing issues or the like, and as a result, we will try to err on the side of safety for this video to avoid copyright and all that by going with a bit more of a slideshow format. Don't worry, we will still use clips when necessary. Anyway, if anything, the opening is on YouTube, so I think we can show a little more of it and admire all of the Yoshiyama-isms. Yep, rather than working on Wonderful at all this year, I guess they figured they'd just use Yu Yoshiyama entirely for this show, as she is listed as an animation producer, and at least for this first episode, was the chief animation director, which will likely be the case going forward. Needless to say, my pause button is going to get quite the workout to try and catch all of her little Easter eggs. Though, it is also worth mentioning that she didn't work on this opening alone. Yeah, any sequence that didn't have her signature skip frame style were done by veteran animators like Atsuko Ishida of Rayearth and Ranma fame, and she also worked with Masami Obari for some of the Brave series, as well as Shinya Hasegawa, who mostly did Sailor Moon, but also appropriately for this show, they did this iconic sequence from Utena. Needless to say, with that sort of pedigree, it was a visual feast with also some fun callbacks to the original OPs, whilst also hinting at some future developments for this show, both in its visuals, though we'll save talking about that for another day, otherwise this video is gonna run long, as if it isn't already. Though, I will point out how our heroines are actually fighting, which is quite scandalous for this franchise nowadays, and wait, these two are fully coming back? Huh, neat. Anyway, the series proper opened with, surprisingly enough, Liko not being the one having broom troubles, but our Mirai, which Katsuki and Nagase ended up explaining why.
飲み会の途中なのにどこへ行っちゃったのかな、未来。
Hi officer. I think we got a bit of a BUI over here. Like, okay, one thing, I'm glad that the series doesn't seem like a good chunk of it is going to take place at a bar to justify its late night time slot, and two, did these two hook up after the original series? Good for them. Anyway, Mirai and Mofurun were out patrolling, as even without becoming a Precure, they still wanted to help people, which they would be able to do with the power of Twitter behind them. Using it, they ended up learning about a fire that had broken out in an apartment complex. And this led to, low-key, my favorite sequence in this whole episode. Yes, in some ways more than what's about to come up. As after Wolfram pointed out how things would be easier if Liko were still around, we cut over to Mirai's waifu, who was teaching her class at the same time, with, I'm guessing the lesson of the day being about how to do expositions. Okay, but seriously, it was actually a really clever sequence, as on one side, we had Liko doing some world building by explaining magical mechanics, whilst on the other side, Mirai applied them, in this case showing how their magic basically used the law of equivalent exchange, so they couldn't do any sort of Konosuba magic to just create water, and thus Mirai had to use some canal water, which, yeah, might not be the cleanest as Laura can attest. But whatever, it helped to save the day in an exciting sequence that really highlighted how Mirai could still be a capable hero even without Liko or her greater Precure powers. I like this, as it does distinguish it from Ultona, at least initially. Yeah, unlike that show before, it just became an extension of its original series with some adult elements, this show is already saying that the Mahou girls are going to remain mostly fantastical superheroines, so there's at least no false promises of a more mature story, and yet also it is showing how they have developed their skills since the first season. Granted, Mirai's maturity was still in question, as on top of that BUI, Liko ended up explaining how they're supposed to not expose magic to the no-magic world, and yet, as we had seen earlier, and later in this episode, Mirai had essentially established a hashtag that she used to find troubles that she could solve as a witch. An absolutely smart tactic to save the day, but yeah, she is kinda breaking all sorts of laws, which she was well aware of. Still, as I said, a great and clever sequence that appropriately ended with some longing between the Mahou girls after they made some thematic connections. We then got something that has truly become a dying art in this franchise recently, the introduction of our big bad in the first episode. And yeah, I know this guy's name is Iru, but with that voice, I can only really associate him with one character.
マザーラパーパの力を継ぎし者。僕の物語を俺から言うべきことはもうない。
And no, it has nothing to do with the fact that I managed to MP3 him and just want to flex a little. Anyway, the fake King of the Fairies claimed that he had remnants of their original final boss, Desmos, that he managed to use to overwhelm Kotaha even in full goddess mode. From there, he seemingly reversed time, which yes is triggering me too, but let's hear them out as this was actually a pretty effective introduction to a new villain. As a result of his actions, Mirai and Liko diamonds turned pink, which yeah makes me wonder if their new forms that we're about to see are more like emergency provisional forms. I mean, yeah, obviously, they're meant to sell more toys, but I do wonder if they're actually like weaker forms that activate when their creator is in danger. It would explain any future nerfings, is all I'm saying. Anyway, Oberon, after seemingly killing off one of our main heroines, at least wholesomely enough, returned to his dog, so hey, at least he's not a JoJo villain, otherwise, oh boy. The next day, Mirai's hashtag had gotten a new hit, as apparently a wild bear was on the loose. Yeah, being racist, Mirai.
てか、クマが出るとかありえなくない?
Yeah, they usually stay in the mountains because of Yuki. Then again, maybe that did apply to cast members of Blood and Honey, as legit, this is a pretty creepy looking kaiju bear. In fact, I think he looked even scarier than his live action adaptation. Anyway, Mirai tried to dodge its attacks, but almost lost Mofu in the process, but she was rescued through the power of callbacks. And of course, like most couples, the first thing they did after reuniting after so long was argue, in particular about the fact that the college-age Mirai was still wearing her school uniform. Girl, just think that you're going through a bit of a midlife crisis. I mean, we all go through it at some point. Why are you holding on me? With that, then after a funny little bit where they properly repositioned themselves, we got the first Pink Diamond style transformation, which was basically the original Diamond transformation, but remixed by Yu Yoshiyama. And yeah, after speaking to some friends, I do realize her skip frame style might be a little bit of an acquired taste, but I do like it as it does make for more dynamic poses, which at least for a transformation sequence like this, is a little more necessary. Yoshiyama's style also does result in a little more emphasis on the character's curves, which yeah, I'm not complaining. Also, she tends to focus on a few other aspects too.
Just
No, wait, I already learned my lesson, and yeah, we probably shouldn't waste that sort of scene this early into the series. Anyway, as Mirai herself pointed out, their base forms had changed a little, aside from just the different diamonds, as they also had veils on their head accessories, which again, let's not overplay our hands just yet, guys. Also, I think my emergency mode theory might be a little more on point, considering that Liko just outright lost her skirt in this form. But before she could put less emphasis on her garter belt, Oberon showed up to make things look more epic. This resulted in outright one of the best first battles in the entire Precure franchise. Again, there was obviously a lot of Yoshiyama's animation, but apparently she was also working with other vets like Shin Matsuo, yet another animator who's worked on mech anime. Because didn't you know, Precure is the best Gundam series? Or is it the other way around? And someone named Yuki, who seems to be a real up-and-coming new animator, so good on them for being able to make such awesome and pretty creative sequences like this where they just kind of go to the storyboards. Combine that with the return of Hiroshi Takaki's nostalgic music, and it made for an amazing sequence. Yeah, in some ways, I still do prefer the earlier firefighting sequence, at least on a storytelling level, but on a technical level, yeah, there's no denying that this is easily one of the best sequences we've got in Precure in a long time. That said, and maybe this is the nostalgia talking, but I do kind of prefer the original Diamond Eternal. Maybe this is just one of those times where Yoshiyama's cut skipping style doesn't quite work out and becomes more distracting from the sheer impact of the poor monster blasting off into the endless reaches of space. Though, looking back at this old sequence, it does make me realize that the bear monster seemed to be created from nothing, which seemed to go against Liko's earlier lesson. So, is the big twist of the show going to be that this guy works for father and he tried to take out mother? Well, for now, he did the whole mysterious villain routine, including predicting bad things would happen to Mirai later, though and he also knew her true identity, as well as that of a nearby girl. With that, the episode ended with the Mahou girls finding said mysterious girl. She looks a little different there, girls. We also got the ending sequence, which, yeah, is reminding me a little too much of that other show, but at least the song Kiseki la Link is actually quite good, and I actually kind of preferred over the opening, as it was even sung by a core trio of Cures. Though Kotoha did kind of get the shaft, likely in keeping with her role going forward in the show, and also to give more room for her moms to flirt. But yeah, this was an amazing first episode, and not just because of the return of fisticuffs in this franchise. I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed seeing that, especially when they brought in so many veteran animators, but the storytelling here was at least leagues better than recent regular seasons. Granted, part of that is because this is just going to be a one core series, but it also highlights the capabilities of the head writer of the show. Whatever opinions you might have of the current seasons of Precure, I think we can at least agree that Yu Yoshiyama and Isamu Murayama have been sorely missed. Both have been used very sparsely over the past few years, and not at all in Wonderful Precure, likely due to that show's emphasis on less action and simpler stories. Thus, this show did feel like a breath of fresh air, or rather, nostalgic air, as this was clearly meant for returning viewers, and maybe to encourage some newbies to go back and marathon the original. That said, for those who did return, it was nice that they had stuff like the firefight sequence to both reintroduce the series, and also possibly build towards future developments with the villain. In fact, that whole sequence had some really densely packed in story elements that I could have pointed out more of, but I also don't like to make these videos much more longer than 10 minutes. Regardless, it was a great sequence to show how both girls had become mostly independent, yet also didn't want to see each other again, both to start a new adventure, and of course to further that Yuri. Meanwhile, the villain was mysterious in mostly the right ways, in that we're interested in seeing his connections with the original Big Bad, and more importantly, he feels like a genuine threat that even the experienced Precure aren't just going to be able to bulldoze their way through. Though on that note, yeah, the return of proper action in this franchise was amazing, with clearly a lot of budget and talent put behind it. Again, I actually like the relatively simpler firefight sequence a little more, as that was a strong story base, and this battle was more of the frosting on top, but damn, it was some good frosting. And really, overall, this is just a beautiful first episode, both in regards to its storytelling and its visuals. Whether you want some good world building, action, or Yuri, this has it all, and hopefully they will have even more going forward. Thank you for watching, and yeah, in case you're wondering what's the deal with the new background, it's because it's from a friend of the channel who enjoys drawing for Mahotsukai. Go check them out on Instagram, as they are a very talented artist who does great work, and they also do remixes here on YouTube, and does artwork on stuff from Idol Precure. And until next time though, for now my friends, and yeah, you're paying for that window.